Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The BC cancer patients opting to pay out of pocket for treatment.
3 months? I can't wait for 3 months.
Why they feel they have no choice but to spend tens of thousands of dollars. Plus, a threat by Surrey Memorial Hospital doctors to BC's health minister.
It doesn't make sense to continue to keep the doors open.
The call to fill vacant positions or close the ER to incoming patients. And it's been animal-free since 1997, but there's a new proposal for Stanley Park's polar bear enclosure.
So we're imagining going into a wood-fired sauna on the far side and then coming out into a cold plunge.
A Nordic-style spa? Is it possible?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. We begin tonight with a call on healthcare leaders to either fill vacant positions at Surrey Memorial Hospital or shut down the emergency room to new patients. CBC News has obtained a letter from hospital medical staff sent to BC's health minister and Fraser Health 2 weeks ago. John.
The standard of care can no longer be maintained, and that needs to be communicated to the general public at large.
Dr. Rupjit Kalin says Surrey Memorial Hospital is on the brink. A letter penned by the Medical Staff Association says there's a clear lack of physicians available to care for patients, leading to a rise in preventable deaths inside overcrowded and understaffed ERs. With staff increasingly stretched thin, they say it's time to start diverting patients away from Surrey Memorial.
Unless you can immediately bolster the physician availability in that emergency department to see the volume coming in, it doesn't make sense to continue to keep the doors open.
The letter was sent to Health Minister Adrian Dix and Fraser Health CEO Victoria Lee 2 weeks ago. Over that time, ER doctors and OBGYNs have made their frustrations and anguish public, writing letters of their own.
I'd rather speak out before the bad outcomes happen.
Bad outcomes, including the recent death of a newborn they say could have been prevented.
When I see how many patients we have and what our resources are, I often wonder, how is this going to work? You know, we have all these patients in labor at the same time.
We have now reached the tipping point.
Surrey's mayor was among politicians and doctors called to a critical brainstorming summit this morning, held behind closed doors, to solve the problem that's seemingly getting worse by the day.
And I've seen bed after bed after bed in hallways. Family members trying to keep the dignity of their loved one.
A problem both leaders and health workers say has been mounting for years, as one of the fastest growing regions in the province hasn't seen matching investments in healthcare.
This is a result of chronic underfunding of the population and the health needs of the region south of the Fraser.
The health minister has since responded.
Fraser Health has got the bulk of our effort since 2017, just as they got the bulk of the neglect prior to 2017.
Summit organizers will file a report outlining possible solutions, but until those become a reality, healthcare workers have pledged to keep up the pressure. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And while BC has started sending some cancer patients to Washington State for radiation treatment, many were already choosing to pay out of pocket to cross the border because of the lengthy wait times here. As Yvette Bren reports, those patients are happier with their treatment, but they're hoping for the day they won't have to leave home to get it.
Leah Roundtree is trying to stay as healthy as she can after a recent breast cancer diagnosis.
My doctor calls and says there's a lump, and she said, so immediately I'm thinking, okay, I had an uneasy feeling my mom had breast cancer. This is not a good thing. When can I get a biopsy? She says you can get a biopsy June 28th, which is nearly 3 months from that point. And I thought, 3 months? I can't wait for 3 months.
She opted to skip the wait for tests and pay thousands for private scans, including an MRI in Los Angeles that revealed her situation was much worse than she thought.
So now all the alarm bells are ringing.
Alarm bells about BC's cancer care have been ringing for a while.
It's heartbreakingly bad. The situation was bad in the fall, and the situation is now critical.
She says BC's new 10-year plan to fix the system ignores diagnosis waits.
We must do more. We must do it now. and we are.
There are plans to open 2 new cancer centers and send thousands of patients to Washington State for radiation treatments. Since 2019, fewer and fewer people are getting timely radiation treatment in BC. It's one of 3 provinces below the national average.
It's a pretty damning comment on the current state of affairs of our healthcare system that we've had to resort to sending patients to another country for their treatment.
But people aren't being sent south for diagnosis, and with cancer, early diagnosis is crucial.
I'm still feeling incredibly unsettled by how unlucky I could have been.
Her push for private testing kickstarted her care.
So I went from having a clear mammogram to now having stage 3 breast cancer. And as my oncologist here in Vancouver said, we're going to throw everything at you. Chemo, surgery, radiation, pills for at least 10 years, to try and save your life. But this is not a slam dunk.
But she hopes she's now got a better shot. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
The discovery of the remains of a young woman who disappeared 12 years ago in northern BC has shaken the small town of Vanderhoof. 20-year-old Madison Scott went missing from a remote campsite, but the search for her has continued ever since. Our Betsy Trumpner is speaking with the community today in mourning.
A flag is raised at half-mast at Vanderhoof City Hall, marking a somber day that confirmed the worst outcome to a 12-year-long mystery. Madison Scott, the vibrant 20-year-old who vanished without a trace at a remote campsite in 2011, now confirmed dead.
It's been 12 long years, and it's comforting in some ways to know, but obviously thinking of Maddie and missing that part of our community.
Yesterday, RCMP revealed a major breakthrough in the case, announcing they found Scott's remains. They won't say where or how, but they say they have a search warrant on a rural property west of Prince George.
Maddie's truck and tent were in this location here.
This campsite was where Maddie Scott was last seen in May 2011. She was celebrating a friend's birthday at Hogsback Lake when she disappeared, leaving her tent and her pickup truck behind.
There was a lot of stress in that first week, 10 days.
Chris Mushamansky was one of the first search and rescue volunteers called to look for Maddie Scott. Revisiting the site where she was last seen brought up memories of toiling for her search.
You've got a family and friends of Madison after 12 years, and you've had hope, and to see that now extinguished has to be devastating.
Mushamansky hopes justice will be served for Scott, as well as many other women still missing in northern BC. RCMP continue to search a rural property they say is associated with her remains. They're asking for tips from the public. But the latest development in Scott's case has ignited more questions.
There has been so much tragedy and grief in this community, but today Hogsback Lake is a place of peace as the community waits for answers that will crack this case. Betsy Trumpner, CBC News at Hogsback Lake near Vanderhoof, BC.
Let's go to Vancouver Island now, where it's been a tough few days for City of Duncan residents. The community is still reeling from the death of 15-year-old Carson Seaweed. Tonight, we're learning of a sexual assault that occurred just one day after Carson was found. Our Michelle Gassoub has been on the island reporting for much of the day and joins us now from Victoria. Michelle, what have we learned about this new case?
Yeah, Anita, the sexual assault happened on May 16th, just before 7 p.m. A woman was walking near the 200 block of the Trans-Canada Highway when she says she was assaulted. So police are now looking for 2 persons of interest. These are not suspects in the case, but they are 2 men, one of whom helped the victim walk to a gas station afterwards and call for help. The other man happened to be in the area of the gas station at the time. So they're asking pleading for the public to come forward and help them identify these two men so that they can gather more information. As you mentioned there, this has been particularly disturbing to the community because it happened just one day after Carson seaweed was found. We did ask RCMP today whether they think these cases may be connected.
At this time, there is no evidence uncovered that would lead us to believe that these two incidents are connected. However, we are open to all possibilities, and this is why the information that we're going to be gathering is very crucial.
Michelle, two really disturbing cases so close together. Do we have an update on what's happening in Carson's case?
Yeah, so the case of Carson Seaweed, she was the 15-year-old. She was in Duncan on Mother's Day for a soccer tournament. Her mother became concerned when she stopped answering her phone. She was found the next day off the Trans-Canada Highway. The man who found her said that she was alive, but she was very weak. He said she was under a wood pallet and was covered in garbage and leaves, and she died a short while after. Now, this was particularly upsetting to the community because shortly afterwards there was information that was released that suggested that RCMP would not be investigating this as suspicious. They've since issued an apology saying they are investigating those circumstances as suspicious, that it is not considered a homicide. One of the many questions in this case, and also in the sexual assault case that we're learning about, is why there was a delay 10 days to up to 2 weeks between the time of these events and the public finding out about it. We asked RCMP about that today.
We have to be careful with the information that we release. If we start releasing information right away without having all the verified information, then we're misleading the public, and this will not help the investigation or the public, as a matter of fact. And this is why it might take some time, but having that right information will actually benefit the public more than if we just release any information without any verification.
So RCMP saying this was very much intentional and part of the investigation. Tomorrow in Duncan, there is a rally, a walk in honor of Carson. Many, many people expected to be there, and we will bring you that story. Anita?
Michelle Gussoub reporting tonight. Thank you. The BC government's push to help the transportation sector reach zero emissions is facing roadblocks with sourcing appropriate vehicles. Last month, the province announced new funding for Clean BC programs, encouraging a move to zero-emission vehicles. And while many in the trucking industry want to make the shift, they say funding isn't enough when the technology to do so doesn't exist for commercial trucks.
The Amazon vans, the FedEx vans that you see, those products are beginning to come to market. But as we get bigger and bigger, the limitations become more and more apparent. It has everything to do with availability of equipment and developing new technology, so it's a big hill to climb.
The BC Trucking Association is calling for renewed conversations with the province to discuss realistic timelines and access to technology. Well, Canada Place Road will now also be known as Komagata Maru Way to commemorate the 1914 event that saw 376 British subjects from India denied entry to a Vancouver port. The descendants of those on the ship say today is a significant milestone of remembrance.
My grandfather will be really happy today that their grandson and our society has done something, which my grandfather went back. The ship was returned. He told me, and when that ship was returned, then at Bajwaj Ghat in 1914 in August, they've opened fire. British police opened fire, killing 19 of the passengers and wounding many other passengers. And my grandfather was sent to 5 years in prison along with the others, just for coming to Canada. They were sent back to prison as a political prisoners or something.
Father was in that ship, and I was the one who gave a request March 16, 2018 to City of Vancouver Council to recognize the Komagata Maru passengers. So then City Council told me that you should talk to the staff now and find a street name. So it took me 5 years to bring this street name to the Komagata Maru.
It was important that we named the street, and I love the fact that it's going to to be at Canada Place, because when you look at Canada Place, there are literally millions of people that go on that road every single year, and we can celebrate the history of the Komagata Maru in the sense that we can actually tell the true story of what actually happened, and we can educate people, and it goes a long way in, celebrating the community.
Yeah, great to see that happen. Okay, Indigenous golfers from across the province are teeing off in the South Okanagan for a first-of-its-kind tournament. The inaugural BC Indigenous Golf Championship is swinging into action this week. And as Brady Strachan reports, young players are trying to rewrite the chapter for Indigenous sport.
Here you go. That works.
For Maya Smith, each swing of the club today is more than just a play for the green. With each stroke, Smith and other players here are writing a new narrative for Indigenous sport in a game that hasn't always been the emblem of inclusivity.
Interesting because we've never had something like this happen before. So I think it's just showing that Indigenous people can do lots of different things and that we're not just these people that are just sitting in our homes watching TV and doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing.
Beneath the clear blue sky at the Incomeep Canyon Golf Course, Smith and more than 100 other players are swinging for more than just birdies and eagles. They're expressing pride in their heritage on the land of their ancestors at BC's Indigenous Golf Championship. BC Golf, the Lieutenant Governor's Office, and the Asuyus Indian Band are hosting the inaugural tournament as a way to promote Indigenous engagement in golf.
Golf traditionally has been a fairly elitist sport, and the doors have been closed to many for a number of reasons. And if you're an Indigenous person, that creates a few more layers of barrier. So to have us all gathering together as a group, doing this and engaging as well with Indigenous and non-Indigenous to make this happen, and having the support of a number of non-Indigenous leaders, to me that's reconciliation.
Golfers from more than 80 communities are playing in the tournament. Proto says introducing the game to more Indigenous youth is the ultimate goal.
One of the best ways to grow the game at the youth grassroots level is to have a competition of this level on a provincial stature where we can showcase some of our best players.
That's not lost on 16-year-old Brody Brook from Prince George. Today, he's swinging for a qualifying score on this course to be able to compete in the National Indigenous Golf Championship this fall.
Great way to show the world what we are, and it's great getting to travel across the country and see lots of different places and meet different people. Should be good.
For Brook, that means drawing on his heritage and experience to bring his best game.
Focus. A lot of focus. I just need to stay focused and not drift out into the unknown.
As he and other golfers here shoot for par on the fairways, they're not just swinging for a trophy, but for their place in the evolving narrative of Indigenous golf. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Oliver.
As tourist icons go, Stanley Park is pretty much the feather in Vancouver's cap. From beaches to glorious forests and the otters of the aquarium, there, of course, is a lot to take in. But there is one place that's been left alone for a number of years. As Justin McElroy reports, what was once a place for bears might soon be a place for another kind of dip altogether.
For decades, this was one of the strangest sights in Stanley Park. 4 polar bears brought to Vancouver in 1962, part of the park zoo. As attitudes towards animals in captivity changed, it was shut down. But the enclosure remains, empty since then, littered with garbage and graffiti to the confusion of tourists.
Yeah, it was sad to be empty like that instead of having something.
Use it for something.
And now a local architect firm is proposing just that.
So we're imagining going into a wood-fired sauna on the far side and then coming out into a cold plunge here in the same place where your parents might have seen a polar bear diving.
Osborne's firm has put forward a detailed design for a Nordic-style sauna with different pools, a steam room, and underground areas to relax. On the surface, it might seem like a stretch, but Osborne says it's meant to be a conversation starter.
Vancouver is all too familiar with the experience of having structures demolished and just replaced with something brand new. I think it's much more interesting and a much better cultural practice to retain some sense of history in the past and to integrate what's new into that.
The structure is under the Vancouver Park Board's control, and its chair isn't chilly to the conversation.
I would love to see this come forward as a serious proposal to the board. I always want to see areas where we can reimagine, repurpose, and provide more services for people that come and enjoy our parks and our recreational services.
Still, Jensen says there are more than a few question marks. The cost is a big one. But so too is the Park Board's commitment to make any changes to Stanley Park in consultation with local First Nations, who have a history with the site that long precedes the polar bears.
That would be step one into ensuring that the respect for Stanley Park is maintained in any sort of moving forward collaboration.
The one thing that is for certain is that eventually the Park Board will have to decide what to do with this land that has sat vacant for more than 25 years. So the question becomes whether a sauna is the thing they want to take the plunge for. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
It looks a bit run down at the moment. I'm not sure I'd want to enjoy a sauna there, but what do you think, Joe?
You know, a lot of steps still to go, Anita, but I don't hate the idea. You know, seeing Justin there behind the fence, I'm like, could you be in a lounger with, you know, visitors to Stanley Park viewing those of us taking a hot dip? Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
I could maybe get behind it. Yeah, we'll have to stay tuned. Today would be a beautiful day, though, just saying, to be in and out of cold and hot water. It was definitely a little cooler this morning. I think many of us noticed. Let me show you the current temperatures out there right now. Marine clouds moved in this morning. Morning temperatures are around 9 degrees for YVR. Just a 16 right now. We did hit 18 earlier today. Bang on seasonal, but a reminder of how few days we've actually hit seasonal this month. It has been a warm and dry May. So a seasonal day will do us some good here on the South Coast. I am tracking a warm-up, Anita, in the long range, and I'll talk more about our fire weather coming up.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
You're welcome.
June 1st brings an increase in BC's minimum wage. More on what this means for families and small businesses already struggling in our live interview after the break. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. A Ukrainian woman living in Winnipeg recently took an emotional journey home. She left Ukraine with her son after Russia invaded, but her husband stayed to defend the country. He was killed earlier this month, and she returned to learn more about the circumstances of his death and to find his body.
35-year-old Andriy Sidorchenko's widow says his ability to smile in a war zone is reflective of his personality. Outside Winnipeg's airport, before beginning a long journey back to Ukraine, Hannah Sidorchenko says her husband stayed positive despite the dangers around him.
He was always telling that he was a very positive person, and what he was telling is that he will return and they will live together here.
Hannah spoke Friday through translator and friend Oksana Lazarenko. Through close relatives of one of Andriy's friends and fellow soldiers, she found out May 5th he died in a battle in the eastern city of Bakhmut. Now she's returning to Ukraine with Lazarenko to learn more about the circumstances of his death and find his body.
She needs to find strength in herself. It's pretty hard.
Hannah says she's heard 2 other soldiers were killed in the same battle and 2 were injured. Andriy was serving as a drone operator. His role was to check battlefields for Russian enemies to minimize losses to the Ukrainian armed forces. Like so many others, he gave up his job, which was in construction, to serve. Hannah and their son Rostislav moved to Poland before coming to Canada. Andriy wanted to come to Canada before Russia invaded, but once the war started, he had to stay and help defend his home country. Hannah says Andriy was collecting pictures of Canada. He worked as a welder and wanted to ply his trade here. It's her hope she can find his body.
It was his dream to come to Canada.
They plan to stay in Kyiv and work with lawyers, volunteers, and people on the front lines. The Congregation of Soul Sanctuary Church paid for Hannah's flight. She wants to give her husband a funeral and then bring his ashes back to the country he had hoped to call home. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Minimum wage workers in this province will see a pay bump starting June 1st from $15.65 to $16.75 an hour. This means a 6.9% increase to reflect last year's average annual inflation. BC will now have the second highest minimum wage in the country after the Yukon. Amid this province's cost of living crisis, the increase will help many workers in minimum wage jobs, but it adds pressure to those paying the wages, especially small businesses, with no additional support from the province to equalize the change. Joining me now live for more on this is Tanya Finlay, a director of the BC Chamber of Commerce and the owner of Finlay's Bar and Grill in Nelson. Tanya, what will be the impact on small businesses and particularly yours?
Well, the problem is that we're having these increases happen more frequently, and it's not just the minimum wage increase. We're seeing an increase in CPP, EI, the employment health tax, vacation pay, and sick days. So when we're paying our minimum wage, we're actually paying 20.332% higher than that.
So how does that affect your business in terms of, maybe you have to cut back on things or you have to let go of some employees? Are those some changes that you'll have to make?
So some of the changes are that we are, businesses across the province are increasing their prices due to the supply chains. We're also seeing employers go to a takeout model where they're reducing their staffing. We're allowing, a lot of the businesses are allowing their staff to work part-time versus full-time just to alleviate the amount of pressure for the amount of income that they incur, because their payroll, the higher they go up, the higher the taxation goes up to the employer. And that's how the government gets paid. They get paid by increasing taxes. So they're sliding these in all across. We have 29 new or increased taxes since 2017. Some of those are on your Netflix. There's a BC Hydro crisis tax. If you vape, that's on there. Rideshare taxes. There's Victoria gas tax, Vancouver gas tax, are just some of them to say. And if you make more money, you're taxed as well. So if you look on your income tax at the end of the year, you probably aren't making any different. And as we said, it was a 6.9% increase and inflation is 6.8%.
So, yeah, I was just about to ask you, if minimum wage workers are actually going to be better off because of the upcoming increase, but you don't think so?
I think people have to start watching what they're spending. I think the government is going to continually rise the prices that we are dealing with. And I think that we need to be looking at how we're spending for sure.
What supports are needed for business owners and for workers to actually make this feasible?
Well, one of the questions I have, and I've been investigating here lately, is that we're paying EI to the federal government for people that are sick or do not have a job. We also are paying the EHT, which is for your health tax. That used to be the MSP. And we're also paying for vacation day and sick days. And so all of these things are incurring, especially the sick days, the EI and the EHT, all seem to be paying into the same thing. So I'm just curious where the double dipping is, what that money looks like. And that's what my goal is right now, is to figure out how is this all happening and why are we not running it through our EI and allowing people to take the time off that they need when they're sick, instead of putting it on the back of business owners and small businesses that are trying to create jobs.
Tanya Finlay is the director with the BC Chamber of Commerce and the owner of Finlay's Bar and Grill in Nelson. Thank you so much for joining us live tonight.
Okay, take care. Have a good night.
A big win for the United Conservative Party and Premier Danielle Smith, but Alberta's NDP inflicted some wounds. What's next for our neighboring province is coming up.
Back in 1957, the Vancouver Zoo was the star attraction in Stanley Park. Its displays were considered among the world's best. Thousands of visitors could be expected nearly every weekend. Now, the aquarium is the star. The zoo is out of date, tired, and run down. There hasn't been a major improvement in 30 years. The polar bear pit is 2 decades behind the time. The monkey cages, even worse. Zoo employees say they're surprised the monkeys still breed, considering the conditions. Curators admit changes are needed, and plans are in the works to give the zoo a $1 million facelift. The details won't be revealed until the end of November, after the civic elections on the 17th. But Maverick Parks Board Commissioner Jim Harvey warns the plan is now in jeopardy.
I mean, look at this. I mean, it's a disgrace.
He contends the aquarium expansion, which he vehemently opposes, will mean the end of a new, improved zoo.
Now, suddenly to push this aquarium project into the middle of it, thus forcing everything to pivot around it, to me is a great tragedy, because the whole thing had to be laid out. You know what it's like in your house. If you put your chest field in one place, everything else goes out of whack.
But not all of the Vancouver Parks Board commissioners agree with Harvey's doom and gloom prediction. They say the aquarium expansion will not hurt the zoo.
Well, I think perhaps maybe he's a little hard up for issues, because I can't see any logistical tie-in whatsoever. If he's referring to the initial expansion plan, which we did look at, perhaps there might have been, but at this particular stage of the plans, there's no way that it even comes anywhere near the land that we're talking about for the zoo.
Mr. Ashford has his own taste. I'd rather him stick with it. In actual fact, there's a sense that you either understand what Stanley Park is about or you don't. I've listened to him for 2 years, and frankly, he doesn't understand it. You know, and you can't teach somebody to love a park.
If a new set of Parks Board commissioners are elected November 17th, expansion plans for both the Vancouver Aquarium and the zoo could change drastically. Eric Rankin, CBC News, Vancouver.
Danielle Smith will remain the Premier of Alberta. Her United Conservative Party won a majority government in an election yesterday, but as Julia Wong reports, it's a smaller majority than her last one.
It was a win for the UCP last night as the party clinched a majority government, but that win also came with some big losses. Several high-profile candidates lost their seats, like Justice Minister Tyler Shandro, Health Minister Jason Copping, and Deputy Premier Casey Madu. Now, while the party does have a majority, it is a razor-thin majority. They just have 4 seats beyond the threshold for a party to have a majority government. But really, this is a huge comeback for Danielle Smith. She lost an election and her chance to be premier in 2012, and a couple years after that, she lost her seat. Now, since she became UCP leader and became premier last fall, she's made some controversial comments. She's also been found by the Ethics Commissioner to have contravened the Conflicts of Interest Act after speaking with her former Justice Minister about a COVID-related prosecution. But with this win, voters in Alberta say they're okay with that.
People know that when I'm in this position that I'll run on things and I'll implement them. I said that we were going to move away from mandates, and we did. I said we were going to start reform of Alberta Health Services, and I did. I said that we were going to stand up to Ottawa, and we are.
Anyone who listened to Danielle Smith's speech last night heard her be very gracious at the beginning, acknowledge Albertans, acknowledge the people in the audience, and then she quickly turned to Justin Trudeau and to Ottawa, and she put them on notice that she is not going to be an easy person to deal with, that she is going to fight hard for Alberta.
The NDP won 14 more seats last night, and they made some big gains, including in Calgary. They also picked up a seat in the donut area around Edmonton. With 38 seats, this will be the largest official opposition in Alberta's history. And Rachel Notley has already said that she will be staying on as leader of the NDP. She's incredibly popular within the party, but voters made it clear last night they want to see a UCP government lead Alberta for the next 4 years. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
LGBTQ rights are top of mind in Uganda after an anti-LGBTQ bill was made law yesterday. As Sasha Petrusik tells us, it's one of the most severe of its kind on the African continent.
The whole of Africa's LGBTQ community feared it, as Uganda's parliament cheered it, ignoring warnings from the West to pass the harshest anti-gay law in the world. Lawmakers declared victory.
If you perform a sexual act with a person of the same sex, then you have committed the offense of homosexuality. And what is the punishment? Imprisonment for life.
So-called aggravated homosexuality, including gay sex while infected with HIV, can carry the death penalty. Those who help the LGBTQ community also face up to 20 years in prison. Activists were in tears.
Where are we supposed to go? How did we become refugees in our own countries?
In the West, the new law was condemned, U.S. President Joe Biden calling it a tragic violation of universal human rights. He's considering additional steps, including sanctions. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted, "This law is appalling and abhorrent, and we strongly condemn it."
We have to remain vigilant on LGBTQIS+ rights here in Canada, and we have to stick up for them around the world as well.
Those who help LGBTQ refugees flee now fear a ripple effect of similar laws through countries like Ghana and Nigeria and beyond Africa.
We're also experiencing a regression of rights all around the world. There is a very well-funded, coordinated effort in many countries around the world, including the United States.
Uganda is resisting any pressure to backtrack, planning instead to look for political and financial support from like-minded countries as it loses it elsewhere. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
Wildfires spreading fast, and that means more people forced from their homes. The latest on the devastating situation in Nova Scotia after the break.
I'm sad to see Grandma go, but at the same time, I'm really excited to be able to be in the driver's seat with my baby and take the lead. Yeah, bring his feet a little bit this way. He's still on the bottle more than the boob, but he's still getting the boob. So we're good. We're still trucking. Good job, boo-boo. I appreciate good care support and how much I really need it to provide care for my baby. Baby boy, I wrote a little poem, my love. I wrote a little poem. You know, I wanted to write this to you before you came into the world. But like most things, I procrastinated. I promised to make you happy. I promised to help you stop crying, to feed you when you're hungry, to make sure your diaper's clean. I promise to take you on adventures like swimming and fishing, and Daddy will take you biking. I promise to scare away the monsters and the bad guys. I love you, my baby boo-boo. I love you.
I want to make everyone know that of what my struggles are in the eyes of a 20-year-old man with autism trying to support himself without his biggest advocate.
Dear Mom, I can't believe it's been 2 years since you've been gone.
Not a day goes by where I don't think about you and miss you. You were my biggest supporter, and it sucks how COVID had to take you away from me. I'm learning a lot about myself and my place in this world. I'm figuring it out in my own way. Nobody can ever fill your shoes, but there are people out there doing their best. I promise that I will still continue to be the kind-hearted young man that you raised. Love, Lamo.
A newly sparked fire is forcing evacuations in Nova Scotia tonight. This one is even closer to some of the most densely populated areas. The threat comes after the province decided to ban all activity in wooded areas today. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell has the latest.
Just hours after fire officials called this a good day fighting Nova Scotia wildfires, they were forced to reroute ground and air crews and scramble more people out of their homes.
Very, overwhelmed and everything and just on edge.
Officials say the new evacuations are because of the fires and a potential ammonia leak near a large dairy facility.
First, we couldn't believe it, but it's now sinking in.
But even those forced out of their homes on Sunday are still reeling. This couple lost their home.
Our house is flattened.
It's just concrete is left.
And their business, a daycare for local families.
And to be able to provide for them is sad.
More than 150 homes in the Halifax area are gone.
There may be more. When we visited the sites, there could be another structure behind the one that we've seen, but there are 151 residential properties. There's nothing left.
More homes are damaged in southwestern Nova Scotia, but it's unclear how many. That fire now the biggest in the province's history.
I would equate this, if this was out west, it would be a small fire, but we don't have the area that they have. So I would equate this to Nova Scotia's version of a Western Canada fire.
Whoa, I need to go. Go.
The fire in the Halifax area has been raging since Sunday. Crews were busy putting out hotspots all day. Air quality remains a problem, and the dry weather in the days to come will not help the threat. A late afternoon news conference interrupted by another call for help. The Premier is banning all activity in the woods. No hiking, no fishing, no ATVs, no forestry, and no mining, after there were 6 illegal burns Monday night.
It's just mind-boggling. So no burning. For God's sake, stop burning, stop flicking your cigarette butts out your car window, just stop it.
In the yellow zone, just on the edge of the evacuation zone, people are on edge.
It's upsetting for those of us close. We don't really know what to do. We're waiting for information. We're prepared to go if we need to go, hoping we don't have to.
The importance of that idea reinforced by the most recent evacuations.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe has been watching the situation closely. Joe, what's the latest?
Yeah, Anita, winds were really the big story today. In fact, sparking a new fire just east of the existing wildfire in the past couple of hours, and that has led to a possible ammonia leak and new evacuations. Let me show you what this looks like on the map. High pressure moved in again today. Winds have been gusting close to 40 kilometers per hour, again pushing possible smoke and embers eastward. The thing we'll watch for on the East Coast over the next couple of days, building temperatures as high pressure moves in. And it's interesting, right across the country, we're in a bit of a blocking pattern. So both the West and East Coast looking at building temperatures. We too will be watching our fire danger increase. But look at this, Halifax likely hitting 30 degrees as we head into Thursday. That's going to be a peak fire weather day before they get some much needed rain on Friday. Meanwhile, we'll see our temperatures here peak early next week. We're a couple days behind the East Coast as far as our peak temperatures. But yes, we are headed into another heat wave for what has really been July in May. It has been an exceptionally warm May. I'll add up those averages over the past month tomorrow, but definitely coming in above seasonal. As I take you through the forecast, seasonal till Thursday, as you look at those afternoon highs, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll start to hit those 30 degrees in the interior, and we could be getting close here on the south coast to hitting the 30s early next week. Right now, we are seeing some showers. An approaching low pressure system for Thursday will bring a few clouds into the south coast, but high pressure moves in at the same time. So I think most of the rain will be centered towards central and northern coastal sections. I don't think it'll quite make it down to the south coast or the interior, where we are exceptionally dry, seeing drought conditions already building across the province. Tomorrow, though, seasonal, Kelowna at a 25, Prince George 18. There's that rain showing up for Prince Rupert and Port Hardy. Okay, Let's look at those building temperatures. Should note a few more clouds tomorrow as that Alaska low tries to get into our neck of the woods. So far, though, just a few more clouds in the mix and a seasonal day. We'll start to feel that heat back for the weekend. And then look at that. This is YVR, 23, 24 for early next week. Anita, we know that means possibly mid-30s for the Fraser Valley. We'll keep you posted.
Wow. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Nearly 4 months after earthquakes killed more than 50,000 people, many scars remain on the Turkish landscape. As Briar Stewart reports, the recently re-elected Turkish president has sworn to act fast.
This was the heart of the ancient city of Antakya, and we're being led up a precarious path to the top of a mound to see what's left of a historic Greek Orthodox church.
This was the whole complex here?
Yes.
It was 3.5 months ago that much of this city was leveled.
This was basically the cultural center of the city. You had boutique hotels, little restaurants, and also a number of churches. And we know, of course, that the earthquakes happened in the middle of the night, and among all of the rubble on the floor, a clock that stopped just at 4:15.
Much of the city's old town looks like it hasn't been touched since then. Cars still sit under crumpled buildings. But it's just up the street where we find a business owner determined to carry on. Mehmet Sürkan Sinkan sells antiques, and some of his wares now line this street.
The village from Mama, Grandmama, where?
He tells us about the first few moments after the earthquake and how he tried to save some of those trapped.
People cry, Serkan. Neighbor cries, Serkan. One living woman says, Serkan. We have 40 years neighbors there. I say, Mama, I go down to help. I start help. You can see here. Here is from outside building, here.
With his apartment damaged, he slept in his antique store until a third earthquake struck 2 weeks later.
And when the earthquake came, I was get down, I was there. I was do like this. It was coming and coming. It was coming and coming. I tell, we are going down this time. Because this one I was feel. It was so hard inside.
So you were on the ground like this and you were watching your building? Was
yes,
it
and
shaking?
it was like this. This apartment was like this. It was coming boom. And here, boom.
That's when this hotel across the street collapsed. The 150-year-old building that houses his store was severely damaged.
It's not so safety. In the first earthquake.
Which is why he's moved again and is staying in a nearby business.
Here you see apartments. Apartments make us down.
Others are in much worse conditions. The truly desperate pick through the rubble for anything of value. With 3 million families displaced across Turkey, tens of thousands are living in tents. This grandmother is heating water so those in this camp can take their weekly shower. Where are my children? Where is my grandson? She cries. Her son, daughter-in-law, and their infant were killed in the quake. Multiple generations live in this camp together, and they say it's hard when the children keep asking when they can go back home. What century do we live in, this man says. Look at these people. I can't talk about this. Antakya is in the province of Hatay, where more than 200,000 buildings either collapsed or were severely damaged. On some streets, demolition crews are at work. On others, apartments sit torn open, leaving us wondering just what happened to the families living here. This historic city has been destroyed by earthquakes before.
Hedefimiz inşallah.
And Turkey's president has vowed to rebuild once again promising new homes within a year, but that's unlikely. Local officials tell us aftershocks make it too risky to start rebuilding now. Surrey has spent years warning officials about how poorly prepared the area was, especially the airport, which was built right on top of a fault line.
But many people rejected my opinion. Maybe political decision, I don't know. But geologically and ecologically is a wrong area.
Now he's trying to warn about what could happen next, a catastrophic earthquake off the coast of Istanbul.
Bigger than 7.0.
How prepared is the city for that kind of earthquake?
Good question. We are preparing so much project, but second question is, it is enough? It is not enough.
The earthquake would be triggered in the Marmara Sea and would impact the 30 million people living along the coast, including the city of Istanbul, where nearly 70% of the buildings were built before the year 2000, when safety codes were strengthened. 3 years ago, the city launched a free inspection program to identify buildings at high risk. Uptake was slow, but that's now changed. Since the earthquake, there has been 150,000 requests for inspections. While the focus is on older buildings, new ones can also be vulnerable. Look no further than what happened in Antakya.
This is all that's left of 5 brand new residential towers that just opened in 2019. They were marketed as being well designed and built to the highest standard, but now nothing remains.
When the apartment complex opened, local officials held giant gold ceremonial scissors. Now there are calls for resignations and criminal charges. Back in the antique shop, Sinkan says everyone knew the earthquake risk was high. 6 months ago, he put this map of the fault lines on his wall.
I don't know, maybe for me a message. Serkan, wake up, it's coming something bad. Here, you can see here.
The warnings were all there, which is why he wants accountability.
I want from my government, they have to go back 50 years. Who have made not good things, they have to get in, or they have to pay some things, because they make it not good, the job, and people die. Children die. Everybody died.
An island woman wins one of the quirkiest and dangerous races around. Well, she didn't know she was the winner until well after the race. Next.
My name is Nick Seaman. I've been photographing the Guyot House since approximately 2010. I've always heard about the Guyot House when I was younger, and it was probably around 2010, me and some local photographers decided to make the trek out there. And back then it felt like a long journey. You're young, I'd have been probably 19-ish, around there. Made the trek down number 3 to go find the house and instantly fell in love with it. It was right when I was getting into astrophotography, so it's anyone who's new to the dark outdoors, it's a little spooky. Now I can't drive by without at least taking some shot. So I actually got a photo with Comet Neo eyes behind it, and so that's not coming back for a few thousand years. It is definitely interesting to go back the 13, 14 years to look at where my photographies came from. We used to be able to walk into the house and walk upstairs and kind of light paint the house, which I'm not advising to anybody anymore, or even then was a dumb idea. But now there's the floor's gone, the whole back's collapsed. Every time you drive by, you're like, oh, the wall's missing, and it's definitely on its last legs for sure.
There's some stories about haunting. Anything that you've witnessed that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, actually, yeah. I took a long exposure, came home, I was editing the photo, and I noticed 2 eyes staring at me from just above the window. I sent it to my buddy, and we're kind of freaking out. We're like, what are these eyes? And you zoom in, it's a raccoon. By far has to be the most photographed house in Canada, because every photographer I know has got a shot of it, and every photographer I know can't drive by without getting a shot of it. No matter if it's raining out, there'll be a picture taken. For good reason too. It's a beautiful home, and it's like they don't make houses like that anymore. The one more shot I would like to get is the aurora behind it. I'd like to make the trek out there and try to get that, and that'll be my bucket list.
How did you feel when you found out that they were going to be taking it down?
It was definitely kind of a bummer, and especially when they kept saying, oh, they've bought a couple more years, like they're gonna maybe keep it. So it's been a little emotional roller coaster in that aspect. But yeah, definitely a bummer for sure. I get it, it's kind of a hazard, but it's a piece of history at this point, and it'd be nice to have it around for years to come.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On June 13th, join CBC's Rudy Kelly at the Alumni UBC's free webinar with Dr. Jeanette Armstrong on revitalizing Indigenous language. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and register for the CBC's Indigenous Pathways to Journalism program. This paid 9-month learning and development opportunity supports Indigenous candidates to hone their skills as storytellers. Learn more at cbc.ca/pathways.
Across the pond now to Gloucester in England. If you know anything about the town, it's probably the Cooper's Hill cheese rolling race, and this year's winner is from Nanaimo, BC. We had a chance to speak with Delaney Irving before she heads back to Vancouver Island. Take a look.
Basically, we all line up at the start of this very steep hill. A big 7-pound block of cheese is rolled down, and then everyone just runs after it, trying to catch it. Some people say it is to catch the cheese, but it's almost impossible to catch the cheese. It's so fast. So it's the first person to pass the finish line. I had gotten back on my feet at the very bottom of the hill. I saw I was very close to the line, so I started just sprinting. And then I guess I took a tumble, fell on my head, I've got a few scrapes. And when I woke up, it was a few minutes later, I was in the medical tent. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but I found the block of cheese was on my lap, and that's how I knew I had won. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. My only strategy going in was, as soon as I felt myself fall, just try to tuck up and try to protect myself, not break anything. Definitely sore. I've got a lot of bruises, but overall, I'm okay.
Every time I watch this video, I just cringe. That is hard to watch. Turns out they actually eat the cheese after. It's a 7-pound wheel of double Gloucester that you're racing for. Now, it goes for about $10 to $12 a pound. So we're talking about $80 worth of cheese here. Not worth the scrapes and the concussion for me, but hey, maybe for some, you really like cheese? Sure, go ahead. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. We'll see you tomorrow.